We were gone for well over a month, almost 2, by far the longest period we'd been away in the 3 years since we'd arrived. After weeks in the north, I reached my saturation point, and I truly yearned to return to Mississippi, to see our house and yard, to see our friends, the local people, to feel the warmth of early spring, to be among those who were active and concerned and working on such monumental changes as electing black candidates to local offices. In the North, we described the movement, boasted and bragged, in fact, over the accomplishment and the spirit of our people, set against what seemed to be drab lives of even those active and concerned Northerners, the writers, the foundation people, the government servants. The lives and activities of our people grew more real and meaningful. We headed back to our home in Mississippi on the train. The night before we entered the state was a sleepless one for me. I set myself up in the club car armed with wine and cigarettes. I distracted all thoughts by reading an abominable popular woman's magazine from cover to cover. The soap opera stories, the advice to those with marital problems, the recipes, and the oversimplified explanation of American foreign policy designed to painlessly educate the busy, scatterbrained female. The Girl's Guide to American Foreign Policy, which the editors suggested might be read in 2 or 3 sittings for better absorption. Finally, as the first light of dawn spread and the birds chirruped over the clacking of the tracks, I returned to my seat and resigned myself to finding sleep. We hadn't yet reached the border of our fair state. At 10 o'clock a.m., the bright sun and heat forced my eyes and body to waken. I wondered where we were and peered out the window through slit eyes. The train slowed to a halt. A conductor yelled, "Grenada, Grenada, Mississippi, Grenada," and something hit me. My eyes opened, my ears jerked, and forming between my throat and my heart was a tense, hot, harassing lump. His voice drawled. As he passed in the aisle in front of me, I saw his thick and wrinkled skin, pink above the blue collar of his uniform and below the band of his conductor's cap. His eyes were pink, white, and his face was red. The hot lump spread out and down through my chest and stomach, which was already beginning to knot. My now open eyes darted through the car, and I could not keep them from staring, first at his middle-aged, middle-height, middle-weight, middle-build form, and his leathery, reddish, tan neck. To my left was an old, wrinkled, red-faced man, a peckerwood, as the local people would say. In front of him was a young white woman with 2 towheads, and near her a dark-haired, pug-nosed white fellow with close-set eyes. He was the kind of Klan-looking type, like Billy Joe, one of our sheriff's deputies at home. I was hit by the whiteness, by the enormous detail of life back here at home. Somehow, in a mysterious yet much-needed way, I had submerged the Mississippi reality so deeply that I had forgotten what it was like. I wondered how in less than 2 months I had so easily forgotten the whites, forgotten the lump, forgotten the fear. With just the drawl and the glimpse of red necks, it came back with a blow. Dazed, numb, and with the lump spreading and crawling inside, I felt tears of indignation at the trickery of my mind and the claustrophobia in the trap I had set for myself. The train pulled out of Grenada and clattered on in the sun and the dry yellowness of clay fields around Winona. I stared at the whites, forcing my fears to be felt, and endured. I tuned my ears to their voices and had to fight to keep control and watch the view whisking past the window. The shades of variegated trees and shrubs passed. The fields with yellow, red, gray soil were already turned and rode. We entered Winona. The white paint-peeled sign was trimmed in black. For me, the black was in memory of the beatings of Fannie Lou Hamer. Her story was familiar to many in the movement who had followed the horrors of violence against movement activists. During the 1964 Democratic National Convention, she told the world on national television of her 1963 arrest in Winona. She described the multiple beatings she had suffered at the orders of her jailers in retaliation for attending a voter registration workshop. They forced other prisoners to take turns beating her on her cot in the jail cell, in the Winona jail, that I couldn't see from the train, but I could feel wherever I looked. A black soldier rose from his seat, gathered his bag, stiffened, and walked off the train and towards his home. The depot, which had remained unchanged for 40 years, was made of brick and built to last. The iron-wheeled loading carts stood idle in the station. For 2 blocks, red-framed painted storefronts faced the dusty main street, with its signs on old storefronts, then big green tractors. Again came the fields of green and dusty gray, orange and red clay, tan and brown. We passed few people in the fields, and here and there a Jersey cow. One field was filled with black Angus steer. Soon afterward, we halted at Reitan, marked by another small wooden sign. Inside the once well-used depot were charts, desks, and phone. The door on one side led to the dark, dim room where the blacks waited. The other side was for whites, the whites I had forgotten existed. I was now trembling, shivering at the thought. I realized then that right on this very highway, a bit outside this grand town of Reitan, in the broad daylight of a spring afternoon, just 2 years earlier, was the place where whites had terrorized and chased me and Henry, Hartman Turnbow, Nancy Epps, and Mrs. Sanders, 3 local black leaders, all in their 60s and 70s. The train pulled off again to the south, even faster, getting closer and closer to home. My eyes still stared at the whites around me. The telephone posts and trees swept past the window. A few tin-roofed shacks, tumbling, weathered huts that could have been shelter for hounds, had real living children sitting on the porch. A kerchiefed woman was sweeping with a broom. Later a man, a poor white this time, walked behind his mule, a big dark beast that dragged the beaten plow. Highway 51 emerged. It raced beside us, and I thought of the times I'd driven it running scared. I saw the green tin sign with raised white lettering announcing to motorists that they were leaving Carroll County and entering Holmes County. A day earlier I would have expected my heart to leap at those words and my mind to fill with the exciting memories, but the congestion in my chest ruled everything. I continued to sit immobile, in horror, full of sick queasiness. We passed a gin, deserted, not spewing smoke or lint or seed or bustling with anything in this spring planting time. We went in and out of West, another town where our tracks divided the rich from the poor, the white from the black. Its previously prosperous businesses all faced the trains, once newfangled contraptions, so all could marvel. Before it really sunk in that this was home and that the next stop was ours, I felt the train easing up. I saw the silver water tower with the letters Durant spelled out. I didn't bother looking anymore. Instead, I tried to compose my unsettled self, to find my things, to keep my eyes from staring, and to keep my hands from showing their distress. I could feel the tense tolerance I hadn't needed in the North. Not living with it, I'd forgotten it was needed. I was reacquiring the skills for survival, and I steeled myself for meeting the spits and sneers and stares, arming myself with thick skin and learning again to live with uneasy fear. I straightened up, bundled up, loaded up, and walked slowly down the aisle. Henry was behind me. We waited, then finally moved ahead. I stepped slowly off the train and touched the ground of home.